looking back at it, what did you learn the most?
So the one big thing that I certainly very grateful for an opportunity to learn was different skills that are not software related. I feel like the big takeaway from Salesforce is that you need to have a very good storytelling skill. Doesn't matter where you go.
Yeah.
So whether you're in IT, whether you're in marketing, whether you go into sales, like everywhere, people tell stories and people relate to stories. If anything, I would say thank you, Salesforce, for teaching me that as a concept, because it does take a lot of time and effort to understand what it means. And really build your own way of telling stories. So when I was flying to US for onboarding program, one of my colleagues said, "Hey, do you hear that we're actually quiet?"
Oh, really?
And I was seriously worried about that and going, oh my God, this is going to be fun. So yeah, I started very much on the edge of when acquisition of ExactTarget happened.
Is there like any plan that you think to expand the practice in the future to new technology?
Absolutely. We want to think, and actually we are already considering and thinking what are the fringes of Salesforce realm that we need to be expanding into. As you go into the reality outside, you understand that customers don't want you to do just a bit of it. So you come as a solution provider, and that implies that you should be able to provide service on adjacent things as well.
Hello everyone, today I'm with Vladimir Silak. So I was thinking to how can I describe Vladimir like the best way possible in my view. Vladimir is like the expert that will answer the technical question to your Salesforce expert. So it's like really when you have like when I remember having any technical difficulties, things that I didn't understand, Vladimir was always the person that could possibly have the answer. So one of the best experts that I've met in the Salesforce environment used to work at Salesforce, but now started a new venture called Carbon X. For those who don't know yet, Vladimir, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Arthur. So hi everyone, Vlad Silak. I'm CTO at Carbon X Group today. As Arthur mentioned, I've been this been probably a new venture, I could say. It's a new company. We've been live for about 6 months. Before that, I've been in Salesforce about 11 years, just over 11 years. I did different roles over the time of these 11 years. I did lately work sort of partner enablement around data cloud. So when you think about, practical training, certification, like that was part of the work that me and my team were doing. And they're still doing that, so that which is great. But yeah, that's kind of like one of the things I did. Before that, I did similar thing for all products within marketing portfolio. And then even before that, I was leading our professional services organization for ExactTarget at the time, when we were acquired by Salesforce. And so yeah, it was really good fun to lead the team of technical experts doing delivery and working with customers, as well as kind of like growing up and building up the team as we kind of came along.
So if we start back from like the very beginning, I saw that you have a master degree in computer science, or like
I did. So I actually did 2 degrees. My first was sort of a bit business orientated, more like world economy.
Okay.
I studied back a while back. And then, we sort of came to Australia. I did my master's in IT because it was a hobby at the time.
Okay.
So I kind of, you start with playing computer games and then you learn a bit of a programming, maybe you pick it up, you get a bit of an interest. So that kind of took me to the path of like, why don't I just try that as my
work?
Just proper like get a degree in that. So I spent 2 years doing the proper master in IT. I've done a fair bit of programming, software development, like a lot of really, really interesting things at the time. And then that kind of took me off on the IT career altogether.
And so back in Australia, like you started like to learn IT. And the first job that you got when you got graduated was like an IT job, or like was it related to Salesforce directly, or was it something else?
Yeah, not at all. So I started with just a software developer.
Okay.
And I was really, really lucky, considering I was an international student at the time. There was a company who was looking for kind of grads, effectively just entry-level folks to join their team. It was a small startup. It was a New Zealand-based company. And with a local branch. There was a small team. I think we started about 5-6 people sort of, and then we grew up to like roughly about 12. Yeah, it was a good run, but it was absolutely non-Salesforce related.
Okay,
Proper software development. So I've done I've done coding of like front end, middleware,
Yeah.
middle tier, or other parts of the applications. I've done work on database,
Yeah.
and thinking back those days, like if anyone remembers like things like DB2, Oracle, like the good old SQL Server,
Yeah.
like I've done all of them like directly.
And I guess by doing all of these different parts of like software development, this always add value today when you work with Salesforce. I'm just thinking about Marketing Cloud personalization and the sitemap, like just like the client side and the server side. All this notion, I guess, like having this background of IT and technology really helps once you start working with Salesforce products.
Yeah, do you know what? And probably even more so now, I'm seeing that when I was in Salesforce professional services,
Yeah.
it was maybe a bit different because the methodologies, for example, that we followed in the way we deployed solution and then kind of maintain the code and configuration was
Yeah.
a bit different. But these days, because we will now work across broader Salesforce platform, a lot of the knowledge that kind of gain and acquired and experience at the time
Yeah.
when I was doing software development, it's still very much relatable and kind of transferable to that. Because what I find with Salesforce, I've been always kind of a believer in that, and I
Yeah.
think it's true. It is a formal IT sort of solution. So when you configure things, despite the fact that you can do a lot of the work in the UI,
Yeah.
if you think about organizations where you need proper change management lifecycle for deployments, so
Yeah.
you've got like DevOps and all the other tools, that all pretty much standard software development lifecycle. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to know how configuration goes into one environment, then you promote the code changes, all this stuff. And then maybe one of the other things to say is, you said having IT background was
Yeah.
super helpful because I've done a lot of the work like on the front end as well as like middle tier sort of part of the applications.
Yeah.
It helped tremendously understanding and kind of absorbing and can relating to things, how the sort of applications work within the cloud.
Oh yeah, like the behavior of an application.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, that's very interesting. And I guess, like, to your point, like of being able to configure Salesforce by the UI only, I think like if you have like the understanding of what is happening in the background, you are fully, like, you are way more confident in delivering good implementation. I guess like you can only manage Salesforce to a certain point if you only work with the UI part, to my view.
Yeah, look, I mean, you probably would have seen a lot of conversations and debates around, like the click no code and the kind of argument around the fact, like, take Flow, you can have a full access to the
Yeah.
very well defined programmable framework,
Yeah.
but you use it as a UI.
Yeah.
In Marketing Cloud world, you relate to Journey Builder, right? Where there's a lot of these different activities that effectively orchestrate an execution of certain things.
Yeah.
I think when you, at least for me, when I have, based on my sort of IT background and experiences of developing these applications, I almost unintentionally relate to what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I kind of compare it like sometimes, like, if you look at the matrix, you see the UI
Yeah.
versus I can see the green code
Yeah,
that drops in, right?
yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I can switch between them, but it helps to sometimes think through why would an application behave in a certain way.
Okay.
And then when you kind of like uncertain, you go like following the technology behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It's supposed to do X, Y, and Z. So you can start relating and explaining things without necessarily knowing
that
what actually happens.
Other people who only see the UI wouldn't understand specifically. Yeah.
And I think that helps with a lot of discussions when people talk about, like, you can create a lot of damage when you use abstraction layers like, Flow and Journey Builders, because they're supposed to absorb the complexity and abstract that from the user, right? It makes it easy for people to just configure the tools, use them, and being user-friendly. It helps to, I guess, empower business users rather than technical folks. And that's a big difference. But at the same time, it does still, in my opinion, every application still requires a good understanding what happens behind the scenes. If you look into high transactional throughput, if you want to think about scalability and maintainability of these things. So like some of the conceptual, I guess, learnings of IT, they're still relatable in any environment, whether it's UI or code-based.
It's basically a very high-level way of coding the interface.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was wondering, like, so between your IT degree and ExactTarget, which is like the original name for Marketing Cloud, like, how did you end up working on a MarTech platform, on a marketing automation platform? did you arrive there as like maybe a IT developer that were like not related to marketing? What was the point that you discovered Martech and like the concept of marketing plus your background that is computer science?
Yeah, I mean, so with all the honesty, it was an accidental kind
Oh,
of
really?
marriage in a way. So I was looking for a change at the time,
Yeah.
and ExactTarget came by because the team was at the time hiring for like technical architects, solution architects.
Yeah.
So I applied for the solution architect role. At the time, it coincided we wanted to move from Victoria to New South Wales to
Okay.
Sydney, and there were positions open in both offices. So I went for an interview. We kind of talked about technical things. I didn't really know much about the platform.
Okay.
And my kind of thinking behind the scenes was I will actually work like on the part of the product rather
Okay.
than as a end solution sort of designer. So, it was kind of interesting to go through interviews. I talked to a few people, really technical,
Yeah.
deep dive and all the other things. And then I'm joining up and going up into onboarding. At the time, it was Neo program, which is fantastic. You fly to Indianapolis, you
Oh,
get
yeah,
to the
that'd be
team.
great.
Yeah, well, it was really great. But you spend the week sort of getting onboarded into the platform.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, like we're doing things. There's a lot of like that
New
user
Notion.
interface.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
where's the solution architecture comes into?
Okay,
Like I
okay.
couldn't quite make it what makes the role.
Yeah.
And then I think over the time, of course, I learned it. But I'll be honest, that was one of the things that I told the guys, like, despite having sort of a bit of economy-centric degree, I did marketing as one of my units over the time. Digital marketing was very new
Okay,
in my
okay, yeah.
mind. And when I was working as a software developer, we'd done few applications and part of them were requirements for marketing,
Okay.
like in terms of understanding how much time users spend on the page, where they
Okay.
scroll, like the hot zones and
Yeah.
whatnot. And at the time, some of the tracking solutions were just coming up. So
Yeah.
probably tells you it was a while back. But nonetheless, yeah, it sort of just kind of organically grew into absorbing a lot of knowledge from like marketing strategy
Yeah.
team and kind of learning from people around me to understand the whys and, what is important and significant,
Yeah.
where they relate with the relationship to the outcomes. But practically, technically, it was an easy kind of swing in because coming up from
It
the
was.
software development, it's just,
Oh, and how many people were working there at the time? Like, was it a big company or like a
Yeah, I mean,
startup?
ExactTarget was already about 2,000 people plus
Oh,
company.
okay, so
So
that's huge.
in Australia, I think there was about 50 to 80 people easily.
Okay.
And I'm like not even considering the entire group. So this certainly was a reasonable large amount.
And was it like a company that was innovating fast or like from today? Because I arrived, I think like when ExactTarget was Marketing Cloud.
Yeah,
In
well,
the
right on the acquisition, yeah. I kind of went through the interview with the ExactTarget team.
Yeah.
And because it was about probably almost 2 months before I started due to the move and everything. So when I was flying to US for onboarding program, one of my colleagues said, "Hey, do you hear that we were actually acquired?"
Oh, really?
And I was seriously worried about that. Going, oh my God, this is going to be fun. We're going up to the onboarding with the thought maybe potentially there'll be some
Yeah.
implications of that. But it turned out to be pretty good. Yeah. So I started very much on the edge of when acquisition of
Oh, okay.
ExactTarget happened. Yeah.
And did the product evolve a lot since you started? What were the major innovation and what do you remember being the version of ExactTarget when you started?
So, I mean, certainly evolved.
Okay.
100%, right? From the user interface change to the name changes to introduction of a lot of studios. I've seen the journey builder was, how it was sort of envisaged, build up. There have been a couple of products that didn't make it live, like Journey Maps. How many of you guys have seen?
I've never heard about that.
Which was, to me, actually a fascinating
What was the concept of it?
If you think about journeys today, it's, you've got the journey, which is a series of actions or interactions.
Yeah.
But when you look at the concept of like a bigger proper customer journey, it's really difficult to visualize the sequencing of one experience to another.
Okay.
So the journey maps concept was that you can visually connect the journeys between each other.
Okay.
And you can see how the customer flows from one interaction to another to the third one and so forth. So you can kind of build that visual dependency. I know a few partners have done custom activities that let you, when you finish this journey, go to the next one kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, like sub-journey.
But visually seeing that, like the whole, what my life cycle looks like, what are the interactions that go through phase 1 and 2 and 3, like adoption to...
That's very interesting, actually.
Cool.
I think in Google Analytics is like path in a way where you can understand a bit the flow of action.
Yeah, but besides so most of the time, the tools that give you that visual, they
Yeah.
are reporting tools. So
Okay,
they
yeah.
tell you where the customer is.
Yeah.
The value that I saw in that particular product was that you can orchestrate
Yeah.
multi-journey interactivity. So
Yeah.
you build dependency and say when the customer, because it sort of helped with the, like with, I guess, compartmentalizing the experiences in the right way. Because
Yeah.
if someone asks you today, like, what's the right length of the customer journey?
Yeah,
Like when you're doing Marketing Cloud, and the answer could vary. So different people will tell like, oh, well, it depends on the use case.
Mm.
Practically, the way at least I was using the kind of like the mental formula for that is if you think that journey is the very much data-driven, event-driven activity.
Yeah.
So whatever reaction you do based on that event, and then any subsequent steps that related to that particular trigger.
Okay, yeah.
Once it's done,
Yeah.
you don't go into the long, like lengthy waits and I'll wait for a month and do reminders. Because to me, these are orchestrations of other mini experiences.
Yeah, yeah.
And even though there's interdependency between them, it's not one linear big kind of chart that you want to go up and orchestrate.
Yeah.
So the journey maps in this case would have helped because you can say, well, if you finish this interaction, the next logical one that I want to put you into would be this one or that one.
I guess it's a bit like what they call for Agentforce Aura. No, it's like
more
the
or less.
brain.
Yeah,
basically.
so more or less, but it's a visual. It's the same construct where you drag and drop.
Yeah.
You can zoom in and zoom out, right? But like think of the journey where every step is actually another journey.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like zooming
like,
out and go, oh, no, I can put all my journeys into like a very subsequent and linear or non-linear pathways.
But I have a question and like point of view that would be interesting. So like long time ago, like before computer, there is system that do where you will program, like mostly on the supply chain. It's like you will program different steps for a robot as a solution on the supply chain. So it's like you give the solution to a computer and the solution will and the computer will execute. And with AI now, it's more we can give a problem to the computer and the computer will find the solution. And when I was thinking about that, like for marketing automation, 2000 to 2020, with product like Journey Builder, we provide solution to the computer. Like we'll say, if this, then do that, and that. So we provide like solution to Marketing Cloud and Marketing Cloud Execute. Don't you think like the future will be, and probably with Data Cloud and Encore, like Marketing Cloud Encore, the future will be more that we will provide problems to solve to Salesforce, and Salesforce will come back with solution? Or don't you think it will be an approach that will be in the future?
Look, I mean, it sort of seems and feels a bit like that.
Okay.
That we're kind of changing the way. So I think the question is really complicated in the sense of like it's complex rather. There's one thing that any AI-led, I guess, activity now. To me, one part of that is user experience.
Okay.
So you change obviously how you provide these instructions to the tools that will execute certain operations.
Yeah.
But kind of taking a step back, if you think about like as you said, the 2000 maybe to 2020, right? It was almost the evolution from batch execution of marketing conversations going up into like more of campaign orientated style.
Okay.
And then evolution of, hey, we would love to be able to react on customer signals.
Okay.
Meaning like if you go up and interact with a widget on the website, if you put something in the cart, if you make transaction, if you sign up for a newsletter, that signifies something to us as a brand, and we want to take an action on that. So you get into like more trigger-centric conversations. And that evolution kind of changes the way, in a sense of, in two parts, because one of them is we proactively reach out to people and as a companies, and we're trying to interact with them because we have an idea, we have a promotion, we have really something to incite them to do, or rather invite them to take a call to action and do something with our brand, engage with the brand. Versus reactive, where journey is really reactive, right? Based on the data signal that you have. So something happened and we want to kind of start the conversation or react on that. If you think about the marketing today and agentic experience and the way, I think even from coming up from the World Tour, right? One of the things that was mentioned there that I picked up, at least for me, was that the construct that we're now really embedding marketing into everything else you do. And therefore, marketing, it's almost like changing the channel and introducing a whole new concept of how you convey with consumers
Okay.
and in which particular context, whether it's a service interactivity or sales, or you just going up and exploring the website.
Yeah.
They feed into what message do we go back with,
Okay.
or what response would be, is now going through that AI layer. It does certainly change how you orchestrate that,
Okay.
because now you want to rely on more tools that say, I don't really have a linear path. And I
Okay.
think the concept with
Yeah.
both journeys and campaigns was always, it's a linear progression from what I think the moment of interaction is, and how do we as a brand react on that, on what do we proactively want customers to do.
Okay.
But customers don't do it that way, right?
Yeah.
You and I both know, like today, you just jump on the phone, then
Yeah.
you switch to the email on the laptop, and then you go up into the store. And there's so many of these different intermixed activities that really difficult to orchestrate.
So if I try to summarize, like before, like the journey like is a linear solution, so it's like straight like plan, and like the information that the customer will receive plan in advance from like the organization and cannot be like updated or like changed or generated.
It's not reactive, right? Yeah, that's right. It's not generated.
Yeah.
It's a predefined pathway
Yeah.
that we thought about,
Yeah.
and we expressed it visually in this particular flow.
Okay.
Versus today, you can actually say, whenever customer interacts with your brand,
Yeah.
you don't have to go back into figuring out like it's part of that or part of that. You're just literally looking into them holistically and say, based on everything we know about you, you are right now at that point of conversion with our brand.
Yeah.
We saw that you've been just going through the path of clicking, choosing products, adding to the cart on the side.
Yeah.
And therefore, when I talk to you, regardless of the channel, if I'm powering it and fueling it through the same data layer, I should be able to say, the next action I should be kind of inviting you to take is complete your transaction.
Okay.
Right?
So it's like a vision that the system is able to share with the customer, like a vision and an opinion in a way.
I guess you can put it this way. I would almost say, if I set an agent a goal to convert you, right? And it could be in different ways, but to simplify that, say, I want you to make a purchase.
Okay.
Right. And you can come and explore it on the website. You can jump on my mobile app and do a bit of exploration again. You can add things to the cart and they can sit there for a week.
Yeah.
The whole point is, at any point in time, whatever you do, it's been captured. The system knows where you are and what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And because I don't have to construct it linear, I'm just saying my entry point is whoever starts an interaction with my product is effectively put into the funnel of they need to convert.
Okay. Yeah.
And now agent's job should be, I need to get to the point where, hey, Arthur, are you ready to buy?
Yeah.
And then all the things that you can do, like the boundaries could be, you can invite them and you can like issue a voucher, for example, like offer them a discount at a certain point in time. So you start defining rules, but in a way, ambiguity and difference is you don't need to now express it as a linear format. You can just say, to your point, here's my task and objective for you.
Yeah.
Here's the outcome you should get to.
Yeah.
And then you have a freedom to do everything you think is right.
Yeah.
But like, here are the boundaries at the same time.
Okay. Yeah.
And you just live through it.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's innovative for sure. And I think that's what potentially is the big change for how we thought about marketing and what is marketing of the future.
Yeah. It's like literally giving the agent some freedom on how, but still having like a frame around the agent on what is doable and what is not.
I like when you say freedom.
Isn't it?
Well, I mean, yes, but if you think, I don't know, in my experience, marketers would be, well, a lot of companies would be a bit sort of like, I don't know if I want to give the full freedom, right?
Yeah.
But what I want to kind of maybe reframe it to is to say, to your point, is it's like we spoke about the programmatic approach, right? When you write code, then you go into the next level. Programming is literally visual UI, right? When you do drag and drop.
Yeah.
So we can call it like level 5 programming. And now we're almost at the level 6 or 10 or 20 or 200, where we say, I don't actually need to program stuff.
Yeah.
I can tell the entry point, objective to achieve, boundaries around that, and then let the tool figure out what is the best approach to get there.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Because now I'm assuming that the models, the AI, the rules around that, the framework that governs decisions is intelligent enough
Yeah.
for me not to be explicitly micromanaging it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, here's what happens as a start point that you need to pick up.
Okay.
And then you can do whatever it takes
Yeah.
as long as you're within this boundary
Yeah.
to get to that particular conversion
Wow.
outcome.
Yeah.
Now that becomes super cool, because from that moment onwards, if you go up into WhatsApp, if you
Yeah.
go up into the mobile app, if you go to the website, if you go to the store,
Yeah.
if you call someone on the phone,
Yeah.
technically, all of that should be fueling up through one layer
Yeah.
of understanding where you are, who you are, what you're doing, and what's the next step. And then feeding that information to whatever the channel experience is to say, here's your next action. We want you to go and do that.
Yeah.
That's
So
very
we
cool.
come from very far away. Like when we think about it, like it's really and like we can really see where data cloud and how data cloud will be used as a hub to aggregate the data from the different channel that the customer will interact with. And do you think so? If we talk about agents, what would be agent in marketing that is able to pull like the action and understand the customer to propose a way to convert it into a customer? Like what will be after that? What do you think will be? Because this seems already like the future that we will face, but like in like maybe 5 years, like from now to 5 years, we will see a lot of improvement and iteration to see it coming on the market. Do you think what will be the next step after that? It's really hard to think about it.
Look, I'm looking, so, even from some of the examples that we've seen in the recent time,
Yeah.
the agentic kind of thinking at this point in time is just thinking through how do you simplify the marketing operations process.
Okay.
Right? Because that's where, like, if we think honestly, you get to the point where every business have a lean marketing team.
Yeah.
I still find it kind of challenging to understand, like, why would not be an obvious connection between the marketing and sales and company performance.
Okay.
Because in essence, if you think marketing should drive the conversion and effectively drive the performance of the company altogether. And it goes like from so many different angles, where you talk about just brand recognition to the actual functional, like promotions, selling points, and so forth. So when you go up and think about like what could be the future and how do we think about agents simplifying that, today, as I said before, like most of the conversation seems to be leading like, how do I simplify campaign deployments?
Okay. Yeah.
Which I'm not very excited about, because to be honest, campaigns is an old structure and paradigm. I don't really think that that's the right construct to be promoting per se. But nonetheless, I mean, it helps in certain ways because you do have that outbound programs.
Yeah.
The more interesting to me is like, if you generate the content, today I still find tools are not at that level where you can just fully really trust them from the marketing perspective, right?
Yeah.
So we can all agree that it can generate the text, it can generate an image.
Yeah.
But as any marketer that probably relate to that is to say the brand damage can happen very quickly, but building up the brand takes a lot of time and effort and money. So therefore, the mistake, if you let the tool to go up and be kind of like running on its own, as you said, like full freedom, it's quite risky because the impact is very high. So the evolution of the tool should get to the point where that generation of the content, because you want relevancy, you want true one-to-one personalization, because that's what AI, in my opinion, gives you. But in the sense where it actually is reliable enough that you can really let it go and do the job.
You don't have to monitor it like 100% of the time.
Give an example, and I spoke about that with few experts, I guess, people who are consulting and helping customers to do things in marketing space. Create the content with 20 permutations. Right? Like a dynamic content in the email. So what happens today? You have someone in the marketing team who will say, before we go live and press the button, deploy that, I want to see all of these options. I want to confirm the rules when these will be displayed to the user.
I don't understand. So it's like he wants, like, before like the action is taken, he wants to have a last
sort of like before
before
we launch that email with dynamic content, before someone says, approve it, they want to see all the permutations. They want to sign it off, right? That's part of the process today. So when we kind of talk about and we focus on agents just generating and making it easy to generate content, I certainly see the benefit, because that true personalization at like at one-to-one level that we've been talking about and really excited about that for the marketing can only be done and achieved if you have like a tool that can immensely scale. That's what AI should bring. The challenge with that is kind of going back to that point is it's risky. And you still want to kind of have some level of assurance that whatever it produces, it's not going to glitch.
But I guess it's also us, like in a 5 to 10 years period time, we will trust more and more like the result of the AI,
Yeah.
and our perception will change, and we will give more trust to the system. I guess it's like autopilot. I never drove an autopilot car, and I would be scared to click on the button right now.
Let it go.
But I guess in 5 to 10 years, when like everyone does it, I will be more keen to try it. Yeah, that's very interesting. So autonomous agent, like fully autonomous, that people can trust and deliver like accurate results, which is quite hard when it's not like an if else scenario. I think this is what we can see already with Agent Force, as like it's not based on proper logic, like code logic. Like sometimes we can see results that are a bit different from what we were planning, and it's a lot of iteration on this kind of like project. um,
Yeah, I think, to me, I kind of go back to that point, as I was mentioned before, is I feel the agent, besides doing this generation and stuff, that certainly is part of the process, and it does kind of simplify some things. It doesn't necessarily makes it, in my opinion, a drastical change in the way that the operations will go, at least at this point in time. But where you can potentially see a bit more value, in my view, and it may not be for all the brands, but for those who do want to innovate and kind of be an early adopters, is that construct where you don't have per se a customer journey. You have almost like a series of these different events that may happen in certain points in time. And then you have your channel kind of configurations that to say, like, whenever customer reaches that particular milestone with a brand, here's the framework for an agent to operate and really lead them to whatever the outcome you want. And you create a series of them that are relevant to the brand. But you don't kind of hard control what are the steps or what are the serious communications you can define all of that and let the tools to choose, like, I want to try that email, I want to try the SMS message. So all the concepts that we have for like channel optimization, send time optimization, for what's the right creative that you want to put, the subject lines, like the things that are available today that you feel it's not going to damage my brand right away. But you open up a bit more how that happens to let the tool try to make this decision. So you're not explicitly saying, I'm going to do only email campaign, or I'm going to have only website personalization. Just combine all of that. And that to me is where the true like unlock for the next level of marketing should happen.
I think like as like someone that work with like marketing cloud engagement, I can really see it, how powerful it will be once everything like rely on like Salesforce core and like the data cloud like as like middle like core
source of
system.
that,
I guess another question that we would be interested to know is, so you say like after ExactTarget you were like 11 years at Salesforce. Looking back at it, what did you learn the most, Salesforce, or what like did you, because when we change job is like this, sometimes when you look back and I'm good at doing that now, and you can remember that you learned this skill over there, what do you feel you have learned specifically at like Salesforce?
Let me open up my list. So, it is really interesting because we were discussing that exact point this week a few times with a few people, and I reflect on it as kind of like we started our company. There has been a lot of learnings. So the one big thing that I certainly very grateful for an opportunity to learn was different skills that are not software related. So I've done a number of leadership training. I've done a number of like presentation skills. That's one thing I learned, and I'm super grateful to quite a few coaches that have been influencing me over the time, because I feel like the big takeaway from Salesforce is that you need to have a very good storytelling skills. Doesn't matter where you go. So whether you're in IT, whether you're in marketing, whether you go into sales, like everywhere, people tell stories and people relate to stories.
That's interesting.
So that's one thing. If anything, I would say thank you, Salesforce, for teaching me that as a concept, because it does take a lot of time and effort to understand what it means. And really build your own way of telling stories. It's difficult to mimic someone. And kind of it feels ingenuine when you do that. So
you need to have your own.
You have to be you. You have your own personality, and it's great. And everyone has the same, right? So we should be celebrating like how people do that. But understanding the concept of that. So when you do presentations, when you approach, sessions, when you're creating learning materials, when you do whatever, like a lot of the times is how do you interact with others to keep them engaged? And really, if you're presenting like a blueprint to people who are not technical, and you want them to stay in focus, understanding what are you telling them, because you're seeking their approval, it's an art. There's no doubt about that. So, and that applies into so many other walks of life. I think that's really one of the really big things that I would say, if anything, if you call one thing, that to me is the big one takeaway.
Yes, that's a very interesting one. And so after that, like you started like Carbonix. And how does that feel like to switch from Salesforce, which is what we call like the mothership, like thousands of people, to your own boat? It's like now.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's been different, absolutely refreshing in a sense of you get so used to in the big company, and I think it's not just Salesforce, potentially most of the companies where you have 10,000 plus employees, we operate in a very big rigorous mechanism, and it's like a living body that's way above you. So quite often you don't fully comprehend what happens across the entire business life cycle. So coming out of that was the big learning of like, okay, we thought as three of us co-founders, we have enough knowledge across different parts of that, but we're still discovering a lot of things and learning a lot of things. And that was one of the reasons why we sort of adventured into this whole journey. It's just like, we actually do want to learn all of it and experience that and find a way to navigate that. So that was certainly, I think it still is, but just like, okay, there's quite a few things. And reflecting back, you do get a lot of understanding and appreciation for some things that you take for granted when you're a big company. So you go like, oh yeah, that
that was nice.
the company training that we had to do every year, and like a lot of complaints you hear from, you have to do it. These are the great things, and I took them away, and like we took them away. It's like, these are fantastic things that build a really good framework for operating the company. It's nothing to do with the final what we do, but like the way we execute things and the way we come together and we structure our business. That is super helpful because we have a reference point and we can go, how did we do it in Salesforce? That's how we did it. All right, that was great. Let's do it. And we just adopt that as approach. So I feel like we have a very unfair advantage to a lot of like people who go up into startup environment without having that similar experience. Because we, like I said, we have that reference point to say, if we don't know what to do, so you can have great mentors who can coach you, and we've got few who help us on the journey with advice. But at the same time, we have that go, it's like, how did we do it back then? Oh, that was the way. So how is it relevant to us? How do we adopt and change that to make it our thing?
Wow. So it's like quite a few like Salesforce points that you bring back on board, like Carbonix.
Totally. Like from talking about your company, from having that, ability to explain people a few things, the way we think about presenting customer stories, like they're great lessons that, certainly come from there.
And another question that I had, like, is how Carbonix relate, because there is two entity, like there is different entity of Carbon. Like there is digital and another one.
So we actually, it's going to be one of the news that's going to come fairly shortly. We went through a bit of a strategic planning for this year, and I can, reflecting on our first 6 months of operation, we kind of decided that we're going to consolidate, like there'll be only one business. I mean, technically we sort of like business entities, doesn't really matter. We operated still as one business, but it was more like two different focus groups. We started with data and marketing because we sort of come from that background. But ultimately, as we start sort of working with customers and, prospects, we can see that in the evolution of Salesforce altogether, it's like there is no longer a single domain focus. So you do want to be a subject matter expert, 100%. So that's easy. But the offerings that we have to provide, they go across the platform. So we can't really, and as you said, the marketing moves to core. The commerce moves to core. Like everything moves to core. And therefore, the future of Salesforce is one platform. I mean, we've been in Salesforce, we've seen it. We knew it's coming, and it was probably a bit more of a delayed decision. We could have done it differently. But we're doing that now because we see that we simplify things. We just have one business that does Salesforce. That's it.
And I see a lot of partners, like such as Visio Karnak that is doing SAP now, and Cloudworks that is doing Snowflake. Is there like any plan that you think to expand the practice in the future to new technology?
Absolutely. We we want to think, and actually we are already considering and thinking what are the fringes of Salesforce realm that we need to be expanding into.
Yeah.
Mainly, to the same point, as we start engaging with customers, coming from Salesforce, within the vendor, you're always restricted to what you can do only to your technology.
Yeah.
So you kind of know like your boundary of play. As you go into the reality outside,
Yeah.
you understand that customers don't want you to do just a bit of it.
Yeah, like
So you come as a solution provider,
yeah,
and that implies that you should be able to provide service on adjacent things as well.
yeah,
So we thought about things that would matter to our business, that kind of align towards our strategy and vision, and things where we are subject matter experts.
okay, yeah,
So yeah, we will extend into platforms that make sense to extend into,
yeah,
that the customers need services around. And yeah, absolutely. It's just timing wise, we'll figure
Yeah.
out when it's the right time to do it.
yeah. I think that will be interesting to see. And as like a CTO or like technical co-founder, what it is, what is your daily job looks like compared to Salesforce? Do you still do hands-on implementation as well, or like, okay, could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we sort of decided in our business early on, like pretty much from the get-go, like even as a CTO, I'm
Yeah.
actually, one of my reasons to come into that business was to go back to customers.
Okay,
I truly enjoy working with people, solving problems, so and helping them to achieve, success.
Okay,
And
yeah.
to me, that was like, I do want to be as part of the delivery framework, so we embed it into the projects. Certainly with scale, I mean, as we grow, as
Yeah.
we get more customers, my kind of involvement will change. But I
Okay.
do look into, like we talk about that internally, is like working for the business and working on the business.
Okay, yeah.
I cover
Yeah,
both.
that's a very
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, because we do have, we still had to establish our own CRM. We
Yeah.
still had to build our marketing automation. And one of my partners looked after like website,
Yeah.
and we tie things together. So we're building a lot of things internally too. But at the same time, part of my role is to ensure that we provide a good quality outcomes for clients. So I do oversee delivery.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
doesn't matter how we produce the outcome, I'm still gonna be front-ending that as much as possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I was speaking with Chad Lieberman when we hear the news. There is a new Salesforce partner, and I think he said, and I agree, that's like you were like the dream team.
Yeah, we still think that way. Yes, absolutely.
So, but yeah, like, so yeah, that's a pretty good news, and it must be a new chapter of life as well, I guess. Like,
Totally. I mean, that was sort of coming up to, what's next for me. And as I was kind of working in Salesforce,
yeah,
my role and journey was interesting. It's not quite usual, I guess. Alliances is like a very unique part of the organization.
that I took time to understand. Like,
Yeah.
it's very, because when I was like younger and working like for startups, like I never understood or heard about Alliance, and it's only since I started working in the Salesforce ecosystem that I understood that there is something dedicated to this action.
Partnerships, yeah.
Isn't it great?
It was the same for me. So like coming up into that sort of part of the business
Yeah.
to understand like, okay, hold on a second. So what do we actually do here?
yeah.
And then our roles were quite unique, and they drastically change over the time. Like when I started in the team, we were partner practice development, and it wasn't just enablement. We technically were helping, educating consulting companies on how they can structure their consulting business with Salesforce.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's very different from product training.
Yeah.
Then you go up into like, how do you enable Salesforce, like salespeople? How
Okay.
do you enable solution engineers? How do you enable the actual delivery team?
Yeah.
How do you structure it? Like there's so many dimensions of
Verticals,
the,
almost.
and we sort of like, we only could manage so many things because the team was still lean at the time. And as we evolved, it sort of transition over the time, and you get more into like actual product enablement. You work with product, you define some best practices and build these and that. So it certainly changed. But learning that whole importance and significance and understanding that for Salesforce, partner ecosystem is a big thing, right? Because
and still will be in the future, you think? Like, what are we? What
100%.
is? How do you think?
I have no doubt. Like any company who's a software vendor, despite the efforts of building up their internal professional services, it's a limiting factor.
Okay.
I mean, unless they make it primary book of business for themselves. Like one of the things that you, as you start your business, you kind of get to learn is like you have to have your focus. You have to understand where your strengths are. And when you diversify the business, it's good, absolutely. But at the same time, what are your main things that you do? When you go up, if the software vendor goes up heavily into professional services delivery, into consulting, they're two different things.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're building a second arm of the business that doesn't necessarily depend on what you do with software.
Yeah.
Right. And Salesforce is a vendor. It's a software vendor. Therefore, we're kind of looking into that. You do need to have professional services organization 100%.
Yeah.
But the scope of that is very different. And the outreach, like if you look into it, it probably dissolved a bit as a message, but like in the recent years. But if you go back into some of the older Dreamforce statements, Mark would always reflect and mention that partners is the outreach for Salesforce. It's the only way for Salesforce to scale so vast.
Yeah.
And even today, at the Sydney World Tour, I think Frank mentioned that capacity and skill set that is needed today to apply and build data, to build agents, to apply AI in the context of different business interactions is so really low on the market that that's a challenge to all of us. Like, how do we convert all our previous skills to make them relevant to what the needs are today?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So if you think about back to Salesforce, the services arm is very small. Never going to be enough to cover every other customer and all the needs of the market. And therefore, that's partnership.
Yeah. And do you remember when we did the data cloud workshop? This was like, because I was with Sky, so it was a great like experience actually, because you learn, but you are also with like-minded people that are interested in the same thing.
Yeah.
And I guess this is really like an illustration of how like Salesforce enable like partner to upskill on topics.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was great. But yeah, so do you think like from like in the next, what will happen for you in the next 5 years of like Carbon X? Like
let me open up the plan to conquer the world, right?
what can we wish you?
We did recently a talk with one of our friends around like when we discuss our company as well, another podcast. But one of the things that we were discussing is like, what is the company that we want to build?
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about that before we sort of build a company, and we still talk about that because one of the things that I still been puzzled with is how do we build a place where people want to come and work with us and find it attractive? They stick together and they stick with us. So the retention strategy, it's not about rewards like remuneration and stuff. It's the place where people want to be, genuinely want to be. So learning opportunities, the projects that would be interesting to work with, ability to innovate, to experiment, to do some things that are like taken and, really challenging the norm. These are the things like we look into, as you said, maybe expanding into tools that are not necessarily obvious or they haven't been done in the past, and we're just kind of like, how do we adopt them within what we do? So we sort of looking into like, where would we want to go? We'd love to grow, absolutely. I don't know, maybe 50, 80 people in the next 5 years, maybe even more. But in my experience, and I think we discussed it with Ian and Reach, you've got the threshold at a certain point where as a partner company, when you grow, so from sort of initial starting point, you get into the sort of middle section where you're comfortably be operating.
Okay, yeah.
And what it means, like if someone leaves or someone joins, it doesn't make a huge difference.
Yeah.
So you can still manage and run through. When you start, it's a bit harder, but then you get to the point where you get into next level growth.
Yeah.
So you need a full blown HR, finance, and all the other departments.
Yeah.
And we were like, when do we want to reach that point?
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
What is our intersection to say? We just want to get like a great business. We want to run it. We want to do great things. We want to have good customers.
Yeah.
We certainly want to make a profit. That's for sure, because that's part of the business thing. But at the same time, we want to get great people to work with us. And that was one of the ideas that when I was, reflecting back maybe 5-6 years back, when I start incepting, like I'd love to run my own business. It wasn't about me. It wasn't just running solo. It was like, how do I get a group of great individuals with talents to be part of our thing?
Yeah, that's like, I think like that's like a crazy challenge. And I guess like there is different components that build this activity for a business to be. Yeah. But I think there is a lot of inspiration that can be done outside of Salesforce as well. I'm thinking about like Canva, for example, like this kind of startups that are like quite trendy, I think. Yeah, there is so many things to.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of goes. Do you want to do software development? Like, do you want to produce product?
Yeah.
Do you want to productize some of the services? Like, there could be different ways of doing things, and we totally think about that. My part of my passion when I was kind of doing enablement for partners at Salesforce was actually engaging with community as well, and doing a lot of sessions in community, supporting some activities. We try to kind of build up some university programs within Australia to try and kind of excite students, like a new intake of professionals who come from uni, who graduates and kind of like not sure what they want to do yet. So it's like, hey, it could be an option how you can join the workforce. You get employed, you get skills that, really in demand on the market. How do we do that? And part of kind of our thinking is like, how do we build this intake program? Maybe partner with someone, maybe create our own thing, whatever we do. But that's part of the thinking as well. Like, it doesn't have to be, because we're certainly not looking into like, pulling people from other companies. That's not sustainable. And we never really promoted that within Salesforce itself. It was just more, how do we combine that attractiveness for people to come, as well as have an opportunity to take someone new and build them up as part of our framework.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Like it's like upskilling, basically.
Correct.
Like,
and making sure that they stay. Like, I mean, at the same time, like I learned from few people. I actually was so lucky to meet few leaders across different big companies, big consulting companies in Southeast Asia, specifically in India. And talking to these leaders, it was fascinating to see how easily they let people go, in the sense of saying, actually, we're happy when they go elsewhere.
Oh, really? Why?
And I asked why. Yeah, I asked the exact same. Like, hold on, doesn't make sense. So you invest efforts, you build people, you get them upskilled, and then you just let them like, hey, sure, you can go and work on the competitor per se. And the answer was kind of insightful to me, was like, sure, because we want people to go and explore the world. Like that's sort of like a parenting childhood relationship. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then the other thing that came back was really interesting, because that there's certain percentage, which is really high, from 40 to 60 of people that come back. They go, they try it, and they realize how good we are for them. So they come back and stay with us. And you see retention of these employees is way different from if we were to try and keep them here. So something like, it's great. If you want to go and try something else, fantastic. I've learned one of the places was in Philippines. Like I've seen these people coming together, sharing meals, in the evenings after work. And it's a table of like 20, 30 odd people. And you start talking to them. So they all come from one company at the start. And then these 5 people work somewhere else. The other 3 go somewhere else. And that's a fascinating relationship.
That must be impressive.
But it's a strong network. So they all support each other. They all still in touch. They all communicate. They all, regardless of where we are, like even if we're working for different companies, there's that element of friendship that is so genuine. And it's like, wow, that's great, guys, that you have that. Because then if someone moves, they move almost like in cohorts of people. Like few friends go together. And I think that's what builds a longer term sort of relationship with companies, for employees. Like you just stick with people.
To be happy for the other, to grow and change. But and also what I'm thinking, and I'm not sure if it's accurate, but at the end of the day, like if we look like 10,000 step, if you work for a partner, you still like the ecosystem, we are still working for Salesforce in a way. Don't you think?
With Salesforce. Look, it's sort of it's a interesting way to put it. I still think we work with Salesforce because there's a big delineation of for and with in a way, but we are quite dependent on them. All right. I mean, kind of if we are invested into the technology and this is the only choice of what we do, it's very risky. Because we sort of like almost saying like we work for you per se, indirectly. But that's where I think the strong partnership or strong partner companies, they never really focus on one thing. And that's what I'm observing on the market as well. And you always have something else. But to be honest, this is where it goes like into strategy, the growth plans, and all the other things. Because I like to be an expert in a sense. When we go and talk to customers, I want to be confident that when I give them advice on technology, I know what I'm talking about. So if you look into magnitude of like companies that have different line of businesses with different tech, you almost creating internal conflict between them competing for one client, which particular part of the business is going to work with them.
But like, don't you think like the goal is to have a complementary technology so that like they don't compete with each other? So for example, as a partner, I wouldn't sell like Salesforce and HubSpot, but more like Salesforce and Snowflake.
And look, to be honest, that's the other thing is not everyone is the same, right? So different businesses have different business models. And For some it works, for others it doesn't. Depends on the size, the plan, the strategy, the vision altogether. So yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
want to look at the, as I said, into the fringes of what makes sense with Salesforce, because that's where we want to focus and be kind of stay true to it
Yeah.
as a platform provider. If things change in the future, like certainly we'll see it. But for now, I think it's fascinating to see the innovations. I mean, I've always been impressed by Salesforce
Yeah.
in the ways of how they innovate. It certainly introduces a lot of challenges to stay up to date, and some ways of how the marketing of things comes ahead of the actual final production of the and
Yeah.
shipment of the tools. But nonetheless, I mean, building the vision is great and is important because it helps customers to think and adopt.
Yeah.
Like on one side, as a tech professional, you always say, look guys, this looks great as a demo or as a presentation, but it's not there yet. But sometimes you can change that as a perception to say, well, actually, this is the plan.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you're going to have that today.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop you from start thinking about where does it fit.
Yeah.
And as a consultant for a customer, the job that I think we're responsible for is actually analyzing, looking at that, and telling them what the roadmap for them should be.
Yeah.
How do you evolve from marketing tool of today to marketing tool of tomorrow?
Yeah.
How do you do marketing in Salesforce in the next 5 years? It's
Yeah.
going to be drastically different from how we do today.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which name we're going to use.
It's almost like Salesforce give you like the North Star to watch.
Yeah.
And then you can advise your customer base.
So I
on
love
that.
that. I love that point. As an ex-employee, there's one thing that I was fascinated by as a techie. There is the North Star vision. So there's a group within Salesforce that's internal architects who looks after the product. And they're very fascinating to kind of explore their mindset and their thinking. And one thing that you would be able to see if you're curious and you're an employee, you can actually go up and read, because they do put like papers together and express what the North Star is for Salesforce.
Okay, that's interesting.
So like having that insight into like what the future looks like as a vision, it's fascinating. So you start, like in my mind, like all these, wheels that start turning, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I know it's not here today. But because I understand where the vision is, then I can start thinking like, how do I apply that vision into more tangible construct? Build a framework around that, and then get into, at the time, educating people about that.
How far is the vision? Their vision in the paper, like you will say, like
they will be different, because there is, like as any company, and this is, I'll leave it to one of the things that it might be like non-disclosure thing for Salesforce, but practically you always can assume easily there's a short-term vision and a long-term vision. There's always that long-term vision. The timings are different, and they could vary because they might be set and change based on the market and plans. But at the very least, like that there's a roadmap for what the bigger vision is. And the roadmap that the product engineering team or product marketing team share with partners, right? Like when you get these pre-release previews and all the other things, they're usually shorter term. So these are pretty much like things that's going to happen in the next 2-3 releases, right? That's 2 releases outlook that normally you get. For North Star vision, that's like probably 3 to 4 to 5 years and beyond. Like that's the ultimate like assessment of the technology, the evolution of coding and database management and event triggers and all the other different systems and frameworks, and then put together into like a haze of like, here's what the overall tech stack looks like. Abstractive of Salesforce. And now then application of that into Salesforce and kind of aligning the vision of the product evolution to technology evolution. And that's why I was like, as a techie, I was fascinated by reading it. Sometimes I found like, Jesus, there's so much technicalities. I'm out of here. But it's really great. And some of the super technical people, I love the presentations because they would have like 160 slides on something that presented in 30 minutes. And they're the people that have like a really nice like cat pictures or some other images. And it's like listening to a person who's super technical doing these presentations. I love that.
Do they have a storytelling as well when they present?
That's why I tell like the storytelling is a big thing, and just seeing these different people doing it differently, it's like that's where expression is like, it is personalized. It certainly is who you are. It's not about doing everyone the same thing, but there are rules and frameworks around that.
But we can see also like successful company have like storytellings, like Apple. I'm taking like Elon Musk and Tesla's like the notion of success come with storytelling in business in general, I guess. So
absolutely,
and I guess as a final question, so what could we wish you for Carbon X and for your few like in the next coming year?
What can we wish for? As in, you wish or us wish?
You wish.
Us wish.
Like you wish for yourself. Like a good thing.
Yeah, the good thing. So, I mean, look, we've got few kind of business goals, right? But ultimately, I think towards the end of the year, we actually want to start expanding and growing up the team here.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we set ourselves for. So we've got a bit of a plan. We started looking for first individual to get hired, and then probably get few customers that we would be kind of working and partnering for a bit of a longer run. So we do certainly not differentiate between like small, medium, large. Like it doesn't really matter for us.
Yeah.
We look for outcomes, but we do appreciate the notion of like having a couple of, let's say, few customers that we partner with for a longer period, in a sense of like helping them to go through the big evolution and adoption of technology. So that's two big things: good team members and good customers.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, mate.